Today I'm going to be talking to you about gender. I'm going to be talking to you about how it is, why it is, and why approaching it as something that is fluid as opposed to approaching it as something that is fixed can be liberating and empowering to us as individuals and as a society. For some, people talking about gender is the equivalent of fish talking about water. Gender is so omnipresent in our society that we assume it is bred into our genes. Judith Lorber, 1994. Now, it's a common misconception that gender is something that individuals are just inherently born with. And this comes from the assumption that gender and sex are the same thing. And I know Mikey Love ran us through the differences earlier, but I'm just going to highlight the main differences today to contextualize what I'm talking about. So sex is biological. It's defined as the categories into which humans and most other living things are divided into on the basis of their reproductive parts and functions. Sex is inherent. You are born with a birth sex. It is biologically determined by certain chromosome types, genitalia, and hormones present in your body. Gender, on the other hand, is socially and culturally constructed. It's based on social and cultural differences as opposed to biological ones. It's more in your mind than it is in your body. It is not inherent. You are not born with a gender. Gender is a concept. It's a construct created by us. It's a societal production because society produces it themselves. Now, what is a social construct? A definition would say a social mechanism, phenomenon, or category created and developed by society and kept alive through repetition. A simpler definition would say something that people have built, not in a physical sense, like a house, but in an intellectual sense, like a concept or an idea. This way we can say that in the absence of human society, gender does not exist, because we were the ones who created it, so without us, it can't really stand. And I know it may feel as though gender is so real because it's all around us, but you have to understand that gender feels real because we give it reality through social agreement, and it feels legitimized because of our constant conformity towards it. Think of it this way, compare it to something like money. Technically speaking, money is just pieces of paper and metal. But because we all collectively agree to participate in the system every single day where money symbolizes some sort of value or currency, it's given a whole new meaning. Without our assigned meaning, money is just pieces of paper and metal again. Just like without gender, we're just different bodies with different body parts. For the individual, gender construction starts at birth. When you're born, you're assigned to a certain sex category based on your reproductive organs. As a baby, you're then dressed and adorned according to the sex category. And in society, we treat those in one gender differently to those in the other. As a child, you absorb this treatment. You adopt the gender identity that your parents and society imposes onto you. Sex, on the other hand, doesn't naturally come into play until puberty. But by then, a child's sexual desires, feelings, and practices have already been shaped by society's expectations. This is because society not only expects your genitalia to determine your gender, but society also expects your genitalia to determine your sexuality as well, when really these are three fixed things. Now, things are changing. We are moving towards a future where people approach things such as gender, sex, and sexuality as fluid rather than fixed, as spectrums rather than binaries. And I personally think that it's because of individuals whose gender identities do not align with social norms that it's becoming more and more normalized for us. For example, individuals who are transgender. Now, I'm sure everyone here knows this, but if you're transgender, it means that your gender identity is not aligned with your birth sex. And it's identities like these that completely undermine the credibility of gender as a concept on a whole, because their identities prove to us that your sex and your gender do not have to be aligned at all. They can be two completely isolated things that do not have to influence each other at all. So an important question to ask is, why do we gender? Why are we obsessed with placing things into categories according to reproductive parts? Because when you look at it that way, it sounds really silly and futile. Some say that gender starts from birth, constantly, all the time, everywhere, and is done by everyone because it is a social institution. A social institution is a system of behavioral and relationship patterns that are densely interwoven across a society, so much so that we don't even realize that we're performing them because we think it's the norm. And as a social institution, gender is one of the main ways that we as humans organize our lives. Now, something you have to know about humans and about yourselves is that humans love organization. We are very sensitive, fragile beings, and we live this very complicated, chaotic, nonsensical lifestyle. So we love instances where we can maintain control and order over small things in our lives because it makes us feel better about our chaotic and absurd existence. And gender is 100% a manifestation of that human need. And this leads me to my second point, my second reason as to why I believe that we gender. Social categorization. This is the process of classifying people into groups based on similar characteristics that they possess. So this human need to organize our lives and people and things around us manifests in the way that we interact with other people in the world. Everyone, as they sit here today, is an individual. You are a complex concoction and cocktail of all the things that have happened to you, people who have loved you, people who haven't, things you've learned at school, the religion you were raised as, the city you're from. That's how you arrive as this unique entity, because all of your ingredients make up who you are. And while you're a very complex and unique individual, you're also part of social groups. And I'm talking about social groups in terms of things like your demographics. So for example, your gender, your race, your age, etc. Now, just like humans don't like complication, they don't like complexity, we want everything to be very simple, very easily understandable, we approach humans in the same way. So we look at each other as these complex cocktails of all these different mixtures of things bubbling beneath our surfaces, and we freak out because we're actually information overloads for each other's brains. So we take the visual cortex, the category of the brain that processes eyesight, and we determine certain characteristics about the other person that we can place into a category so that they might be more easily understandable for us. So we categorize ourselves and arrange ourselves into certain groups, and this is obviously a very constricting and limiting way to live life as ourselves and with people around us, because in truth we hold each other back from our individuality by constricting ourselves to certain groups and then place subconsciously expectations on each other to act and behave and live in a way that coincides with our expectations. To illustrate my points, I'll draw on a personal example. My gran, my mom's mom, is an incredible woman. She is naturally dominant, headstrong, she runs the family, everyone is scared of her, she organizes everything behind the scenes. She grew up poor, one of 5 on the west coast of the US. She studied to be a nurse and then moved to New York City when she was 22 to start her life and start her career. And there she met my grandfather, who was her complete opposite, so he's a perfect match, submissive, gentle, just the most kindest man. And when she married him, she quit her job as a nurse and devoted her life to raising my sister and my mom and her 2 brothers. And we have a joke in our family that their life, everything in the domestic sense in every way was just the picture, it was just the perfect picture. Like their family photos look like they're Stepfords or something. And it's because my gran ran their lives in a way that she approached everything. She was a perfectionist. If it was throwing a cocktail party or planning a family trip, everything was done to the T because she was hypervigilant, she was a perfectionist, she was intelligent. And often I look at her and I wonder what she could have accomplished if she happened to be born a man. Because I think that a man with her presence and her character and her mind would have been noticed very early on in life and would have been socialized to be something so great. And I don't think that my gran has regrets. I don't think that she's not fulfilled by the life that she chose. She's very happy and lived beautifully. But I do think that she should have been socialized to want more based on her character and based on her mind. And I do think that she wasn't socialized to want more because she was a woman. And this is an example that's obviously not representational of our time because things have changed and we've progressed. But it doesn't mean that we don't all do this on a microaggressive level every single day to ourselves and to each other. We gender everything. We gender, I'm sure you remember all Mike's examples, we gender drinks and colors and clothing and genres of TV shows and music, and it's just so extra and unnecessary. Like, live your life. And this is the main point that I want to illustrate today. It's that fixed categories hold us back from achieving so much. I'll draw another personal example. These are my parents. They are flippin' cute and still this cute 24 years later. My dad is colored, my mom is white. My dad is Afrikaans, my mom is English. My dad is South African, my mom is American. And they come from two completely opposite worlds. And as their kid, I embody all of the things that they make in combining their worlds. And people are always trying to categorize me and place me in a box, and failing dismally because I have never fit into any fixed category. I've always existed in the gray spaces when it comes to every facet of identity. And so I'm passionate about fluidity because I don't really have a choice in the matter, because I've never really known anything else. Another way that I like to represent fluidity is the way that I dress. My obsession with men's clothes started very early in life. And to be honest, as a kid, I think I liked boys' clothing more than girls' clothing because I was always a chubby kid and I was always ashamed of my body. And boys' clothing allowed me to wear clothing that was bigger and bulkier and would hide what I looked like, because girls are supposed to look a certain way and be small and petite and pretty, and I never felt that way, so I never felt drawn to the clothing that was made for those girls. And then when I was 19, I went through a very traumatic year and I lost 15 kgs. And my entire attitude towards my body changed, because when I got dressed in the morning, my priority was no longer hiding my body. But for some reason, I couldn't shake my obsession with wearing men's clothing, because it was still what felt most comfortable and most natural. And I realized that I used to wear baggy clothing because I hated my body and I wanted to hide it. But then I turned into a person who now wears baggy clothing because I love my body and I want it to be comfortable. And I realized that I'm comfortable in baggy clothing because when I wear men's clothing, I'm allowed to adopt characteristics that I was always socialized to believe weren't for me. Characteristics like power and dominance and control. And when I wear men's clothing, I can stand and sit and walk and carry myself like powerful men that I've known in my life. As I'm standing before you right now, I'm mentally channeling how my dad speaks in front of people, because he's the best public speaker I've ever seen. And as I walk and talk and do whatever I do, I'm channeling him because I associate the qualities that I want to take on with him. And that shouldn't stop me because he's a man and I'm a woman. We should be borrowing traits and characteristics across genders and across fixed categories based on what we're individually drawn to, not based on what society tells us is appropriate for our category. So I just want to encourage everybody to live fluidly, to start with small ways and to borrow from fixed categories, even if you've been socialized to believe that they aren't yours. I mean, it's so simple. Like, girls are always coming up to me and like stroking my shirts and being like, where did you get this? It looks so comfortable. And I'm like, girl, it's in the section that you've been socialized to believe will like spontaneously combust if you step inside of it. Like, it's not just for the men in your life. Like, it's clothing, it is material. Like, set yourself free, jeez. So, it sounds scary and it sounds intimidating, but you've seen our talks today. I mean, I nearly started crying when TK and Stefan started crying up here. It's so beautiful to see us borrow characteristics from the opposite gender that we've been socialized to believe aren't for us. It's so beautiful to see men being vulnerable, and so beautiful to see women being dominant and in control and bossy. We tell boys not to cry because it makes them weak, and we tell girls not to order men around because it makes them bossy, but like, oh my gosh, like it's baseless. It is so baseless. It's based on reasons that we don't even understand anymore because they're so archaic. So yeah, live fluidly, don't live fixedly. And if that sounds too scary, just start with something simple like clothing. Thanks.